And now it's time for another episode of Agriculture in East Texas, brought to you by Shelby Savings Bank. This time we visited the Red Gate Farm located inside Shelby County, and while there I received a tour from Mr. Tom Bellmyer and learned about this historical little farm.
My grandparents, they were wheat farmers and had a dairy in Copan, Oklahoma, and that's where my father was raised. And it was kind of interesting. My grandparents were actually in the Oklahoma land rush, and they acquired their original family farm as Sooner boomers in the land rush, and but that's where my dad was raised, and they had Jersey cattle and had a large dairy and were wheat farmers.
Now your father got involved with the farming from your grandparents, with the dairy and wheat farm like you said, but tell us a little bit about your mother.
My mother, she was raised in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. She was raised there in town. My dad was from Copan, which is a very, very close little neighboring town, and they met. But yeah, she was. Her father was involved with AT&T and was with the phone service there in Oklahoma across the state. So she was kind of from town, and my dad was from the country.
And what brought them to Texas?
After World War II, my dad was in the Air Force in World War II and bomber wing, and at the end of the war, it looked like jobs were kind of few and far between, and it looked like Texas was the place to come. They came to Houston, and both of them over time, I guess in about 1947 they came, 46. And I was born in 48 in Texas. My sister, she's from Oklahoma. She's older than me. And then they came as really because that's where the work was, and it was a little easier to secure work at that time.
As you can see here, Mr. Bellmyer loaded up in his go-kart and gave me a tour of his farm. All right, so how many cattle do you have out here?
There's 29 in this patch right here. 19 will be having their first calf in January, and then there's 10 replacement heifers, and that's basically all the replacement heifers. Here's a girl here that's going to be having her first calf, but all of these are part of the replacement heifers from this year.
And moving into your history, tell us a little bit about what you've done as far as work.
Well, I graduated from high school there in Pasadena in 1966, and got into construction work and was started working in construction work. Started welding. Worked as a pipeline welder for years and years. Then later in the 70s, went to night school and got some certifications. Joined the American Welding Society. Became a certified welding inspector. Stopped my welding career at that time and started working for a major construction company called M.W. Kellogg. First job I had for them, I went to the People's Republic of China as a welding inspector. Finished up that job, ended up going to the island of Borneo for them and worked on an LNG facility as a welding inspector for them, and came back and over the course of years worked as a welding inspector, and actually went to Alaska in the early 90s as a welding inspector, and finished up my career there on the North Slope of Alaska as actually a construction supervisor and construction manager, managing some construction projects for, at that time it became BP. I originally went for ARCO.
All right, we're here at the old milk house you was talking about. So this used to be a dairy farm here.
Back in the 1940s and 50s, this original piece of property of my parents was known as the McElroy Dairy. Mr. McElroy lived in Tenaha, and this was a dairy farm that he had. And this building was built in the 1940s. It was the milking parlor, and then all the milk machines and the cooler were up here in the front part. It's very big concrete floor, concrete foundation. All cows would come in. If my recollection is correct, I think he milked 8 cows at a time. I think there were 4 stalls down each side. And we converted it over. Actually, when I was a kid, we converted it over, and this is where we lived at on weekends, was in this milk parlor and milking area. 2 years ago, I tore all the siding off of it, took the roof off of it. It's such a good, strong building, and then covered it in metal and rebuilt part of it. And I've turned it into feed and mineral and supply storage area. Put a roll-up door in the back of it, and it's very, very handy. It's where I keep my golf cart, and can't imagine this building not being here as strong and sturdy as it is. It's just a great building to have, and with the concrete floor and the concrete sides, it keeps rodents and that sort of thing out real easy.
Okay, talking a little bit more about your operation here, around how many head of cattle do you have?
We have here on the place close to 130 head of adult females, and then we have a supporting bull battery. Have a small group of replacement heifers that I manage. Kind of typical of everybody in East Texas, I have primarily black cattle with some Brahman influence, black baldy, mott-faced cattle. I have a small group of red cattle that are still Brahman influenced, some F1 cattle, and then I have some that are some Santa Gertrudis Brahman influenced red cattle. Run Sim Angus and Simbra bulls, black and red bulls on my cattle.
So what has agriculture meant for you personally and for your family as well?
Well, it's really, it's a lifestyle, and growing up as a kid, hearing my dad talk about being on a large dairy farm, and then being wheat farmers in northeastern Oklahoma, you know, there's a certain love that you have about the idea of being on the land. I always knew, even when we first got this place, that I felt like this was where I would end up, and it's where I always wanted to end up, and wanted to live in East Texas and run cattle here. And I remember one of the last meetings that I held with a contractor there on the North Slope before I left. I made the comment in the meeting to everyone that I felt like I was a lucky individual, that I got to do the things that I wanted to do. I saw the world, was able to do the construction love that I liked of pipelines, and raise cattle and move to East Texas. So I felt like I was a fortunate individual to accomplish the things that made me happy.
Agriculture in East Texas is brought to you by Shelby Savings Bank.
cbc-radio.com, keeping you connected wherever you go.